Hi, we're back. So I was just thinking about how right after I started getting high, which wasn't just about taking drugs and smoking pot and drinking, it was about joining a fellowship of other escapees, peers that had no longer decided to march to the tune of their parents and authority. And it was a whole transformation for me. And not only did I become part of this fellowship, but I began an inner transformation. And what happened was I began seeing the world completely different. And an aesthetic presented itself to me. And from that first moment of realizing that the costume I was wearing was really a costume and not actually clothing that I picked, but a costume that my parents and society had picked for me. From that moment on, I don't remember how I did it. I think I went to a thrift store and bought some jeans that would actually fade and would wear. And I remember, I don't know how I got a hold of the idea of tie-dyeing, but I did. And I remember one morning my mother, Saturday mornings was the day for my mother to go marketing. And one day I guess a couple Saturdays after that first time, I started getting loaded. She yells down, "John, I'm going to the market!" And that's the way we communicated in our house. Yelling from room to room was much better than face-to-face, communication and conversation. And going to the store, you want anything? And I responded, "Yeah, get me 2 boxes of Rit dye," because I was going to tie-dye some shirts. So the minute the door closed, I fired up my bong and took some hits of weed and became fortified. And I started looking around. I needed some clothing to actually do this tie-dyeing process with. And I could find nothing that I would not be censured for ruining. It was, "You ruined that," would be the words that my mother would say as she saw what I did to a good white t-shirt. And I ended up we had this long cedar closet downstairs that was like many areas of my parents' house that wasn't actually being lived in. Stuff would just get crammed. I mean, they were pack rats, and my dad mainly was the pack rat, and there was no order in these areas. Well, in this one long cedar closet, instead of fine clothing being hung, there was like camping gear and camping clothing, and I ended up finding some thermal underwear. And my mom came home later, and I ended up getting my little jute twine and tying up the shirt, and I made my first tie-dye shirt, and I had several. And I started this whole inner and outer transformation aesthetically. And shortly thereafter, in fact it might have been that same day, I think it was, I had this orange chair in my bedroom. It was a like hand-me-down from what was in our family room originally at the first house I grew up in El Sereno. And it was like, your typical 60s, modern type of furniture. It had this hideously ugly orange styrofoam cushion on the where you would sit, and then on the back, and it was laid down pretty close to the ground. It was really comfy chair. So this was my orange chair in my bedroom. So I'm sitting in the orange chair, taking another hit of weed, and I was very, very, very careful about blowing my marijuana smoke out the window. And I had a whole system of whichever way the wind was blowing, I would either sit here or I would sit there, or I'd have the back door open, which created a airflow, and just I had a whole aerodynamic thing happening with that, so I wouldn't get busted for smoking pot. And I was sitting in that chair, and I'm looking at my room, and I had this hideous green linoleum covering the floor. It was like my jeans. It was a picture of carpet. The linoleum was a picture of carpet, and it was a hideous color. It was like this teal turquoise. It was awful. And I'd been living with that since we moved there when I was 6. So, I'd been living in that room for 9 years with this hideous linoleum. And I got up and I just feverishly started tearing that linoleum up, transforming my room. And, I didn't get any permission to do it. I just took it upon myself, and I got it all torn up. It took me a good hour. And put a trash can underneath we had this window that I blew this pot smoke out, and right underneath that window I put a trash can. I just started loading this linoleum up into the trash can and transforming my room. And I had all these articles from Boy's Life, which was a Boy Scouts of America bi-monthly publication, and I had all these articles that I'd cut out, and I'd taped them up on the wall. That was my bedroom. That was my life. Boy Scouts, basketball, and explosives. That was my life prior to this transformative journey beginning. And I tore all those down, and I remember, I was going to go into Hollywood and get some black light posters and decorate my room and make it this whole new thing. But I remember the tie-dye shirt and tearing up the crappy fake rug picture on linoleum was huge, and so that began the transformation of my exterior as well as my interior. And more shall be said about that as time goes on. Thank you.